And we're live. Here we are.
Hey, everyone.
Once again, everyone, thanks for coming out. If you're tuning in live, we really appreciate it. It's fun. Helps make these, I guess it puts you on edge a little bit, right? You want to perform.
A little bit, yeah. There's no editing anything out, you know?
What's our goal tonight?
Talking about a distinctive style of cinema tonight. I say style specifically because although some people might say genre by accident, this is not a genre. This is a style of filmmaking, film noir.
Could you call it a cycle of filmmaking? Meaning that, like, because I don't, to say style means you're kind of going for something. Whereas I think a lot of these guys made these unwittingly. So, in a way, it's sort of like a post hoc definition for like a phenomenon,
That's
right?
a very valid point, yes. But I think the nomenclature is kind of this is like all semantics and stuff. So yes, I think
Absolutely.
what you just said is 100% true. But I think the way it's described in most literature seems to be that it is a distinct thematic and visual style of filmmaking that, yes, when it came in a very distinct wave of time period, right?
100%. I think a big interest of ours when we're talking about film noir, first of all, we like film noir movies. And Ryan, if you could sort of extrapolate, we picked 4 films to talk about tonight: The Glass Key, The Big Sleep, Laura, and Double Indemnity, which are all 3 of them are definitely hard and fast top 10 classics of the genre. Now, I picked The Glass Key. It's considered a noir, sure, by Richard Schickel anyway. He talks about it in his Double Indemnity BFI book that I was just reading. But um, it sort of doesn't fit super comfortably, but in that way, by talking about it, we will kind of move towards a definition of film noir, which I think is interesting to me because I like to classify stuff and put things in little boxes. If you watch a lot of my videos, a primary interest of mine is discovering why a movie resonated at a certain time or out of what social circumstances made this movie possible. So in that way, the mystery behind film noir and its origins has always been very compelling to me. But what do you like about these movies?
Well, I personally am attracted to these movies because other than, and I've talked about this a lot in the past, obviously my gateway into the world of, vintage cinema, old school films was the horror genre, right? So it was talking about
Yeah.
Universal monsters and all that kind of stuff, all that good stuff. Well, that only gets you so far. And the next step in, pursuing an interest in this, beyond just the, casual was film noir. So one of the one of the movies we're going to be talking about tonight, Laura, was one of the first film noirs that I encountered. It was when I think my mom was buying all these like DVDs at Costco, which were like the Fox Film Noir collection they put out. Probably what is this, like late 2000s, mid to late 2000s, and they were just cranking out every catalog title they had, and you could get them pretty cheap at Costco. And the first one I popped in was Laura, and I was hooked. I mean, this is like I hesitate to call it like a perennial noir because in so many ways it is a noir, and in so many ways it is not. So
Yeah.
it's kind of fascinating in that regard. It's hailed as a exemplary film noir, but yet you can make the case that it's not at all. So in that regard, I have a personal connection to that film that served as a gateway drug to all these other movies. So
Yeah, it's sort of a famously irascible genre. It's kind of like that, I know it when I see it defense, right? There's sort
mhm.
of a feeling to it where you get the idea that you're watching a film noir, right? But yeah, I think to come up with a particular definition of it is difficult, because we were talking last night about how they get pretty liberal with the definition. I mean, I've seen you talked about how you saw Casablanca was characterized as a noir because I guess it takes place at night and there's light coming through, window shades. Um, but it's definitely not a film noir movie because I think for a film noir, well, I mean, go off,
No,
Tim.
no, no, no. You please give me
Oh, yeah, I
your
mean, I've heard
personal.
Notorious talked about as a film noir. It just, but you can't get to the stage where everything that's black and white that has an element of crime in it is somehow a film noir. Like, that can't be the case,
No,
right?
not at all. And as I was telling you in one of the books, even it's a pretty hardcore book. This the Tashin book on film noir.
Yeah.
They include movies like Vertigo and Psycho as film noirs, and I think that's just absolutely crazy to do that.
Yeah, I agree because it's moved out of I think film noir definitely exists within a specific time and place. Like, people put sort of arbitrary dates on it, like, well, it started in 1940, and it ended in 55, or it started in 45 and ended in 55, right? But I do think that it is definitely the it's like the product of a seminal time, right? And I think by the time you get to the 60s, it's over.
Or,
You know,
yeah.
and I guess if I had to think about it, there are certain I wouldn't say there's one holistic idea behind film noir, like, oh, if there's an element of fatalism, that's film noir. No, because I mean that's in Vertigo, right?
Mhm.
But I think that if we were to jump into our discussion of the glass key, I think we can touch on some of this stuff. Would you mind if
Yeah.
we just jumped right in?
1 second though, I would say, and
Yeah,
I
go
think it's
ahead.
a great point though, is that the glass key serves as a good example of a transitional film. I think in order to really understand the noir concept, you have to understand what came before. And so, as you look at 1930s movies, what's very popular, what was a very popular trend at the time, especially Warner Brothers was the pinnacle, the pinnacle studio for this was the gangster film, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
was a very very popular genre that kind of exemplified the times that people were living in, in the Great Depression era and all that. You had movies like The Public Enemy and Little Caesar, where criminals were, kind of vaulted as heroes to a certain extent, but you always knew that they were bad. Their intentions were never, shrouded as being having any kind of goodness or altruism to them. They were looking out for themselves, number one, and if
Yeah.
they if they took some of their heat out on the establishment and the powers that be, so much the better. The audience got a thrill of it, but they were always punished for their crimes at the end of the movie, right?
Right, correct.
As we move as things move on and things get a little bit more complicated, the protagonists of film noirs sort of can be like that, but we now add many many shades of gray to those personas, to those protagonists, where now we as the audience are being subverted and asked to identify with those characters on a different level that we maybe perhaps were not as somebody in Little Caesar or
Yeah,
any other gangster film, right?
James Cagney robbing the bank and, like, you know, uh, acting as an affront to the police is sort of vicarious entertainment, right?
Hmm.
And the filmmakers could justify themselves by saying, "Well, he gets shot in the end, Mother of Mercy, is this the end of Rico?" Right? Sort of to disregard the past hour and a half of mayhem and insanity that we've witnessed as these guys go on like a rampage. But with this, yeah, you're asked to identify or be in the position of basically, I think, a hallmark of film noir a lot of times, a definition that I liked, is that you either have a seeker hero or a victim hero, right?
Hmm.
So in the Billy Wilder film Sunset Boulevard or a Double Indemnity, you have a victim hero, right? Average guy gets roped into some kind of scheme,
I mean,
right?
oh god, would you call Walter Neff a victim though? I mean, that guy that's a bad dude in and of himself, though. Come on.
Yeah, but I mean, what if he had committed the crime if it wasn't for the nudge, right? I mean, he is sort of a victim hero. I mean, victim of you can be a victim of your own vices too, right?
I like to think of, we're not talking about this movie tonight, but since you brought that point, I think the John Dahl in Gun Crazy is
Yeah.
much more a victim hero than Walter Neff. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, sure. Because Walter kinda comes up with the whole plan, right? I mean,
Right.
yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. But he's a victim of circumstance. He's
True.
a victim, you know what I mean? It's
Fair enough.
like it all leads to his ruin. You know what I mean? So therefore, he's a victim of circumstance, of society, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
These characters make a decision and they're doomed, right?
I like
They
that better. I like that better is that he is a victim of society and certain. He's been pigeonholed into this world of. And now we're getting too much into the movie, but he's been pigeonholed into this world of the insurance business, right? Where he sees all the horrible things that people do to each other, and how the insurance companies then also screw over the individuals too. And
Yeah.
he wants to subvert that, right?
Sure, sure. Um let's get into the Glass Key, because I think talking about
Okay.
gangster movies is really important to
Okay.
set the stage here, because we could just keep going like this forever. But I
Okay.
think by talking about some of these movies, we'll excavate some more information. So I'm going to pull up this really rad PowerPoint. Sebastian Urbano says Cinecrisis, back at it. Yes, sir, we're back. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. This is the Glass Key. It was directed by some guy who went on to do a lot of TV shows, right?
To be fair, I thought about the exact same thing, but then I realized I've seen multiple movies that this guy has directed. This guy's name is Stuart Heisler, and they're not anything great, but he did make the Paramount monster horror movie, The Monster and the Girl, which is about I think it was, if I recall correctly, it's about a criminal who gets his brain transplanted into a giant ape. So
Yes.
look out for that one. And what was the other one? Oh,
Living His
Tokyo
Truth.
Joe. Tokyo Joe with
Oh,
Humphrey Bogart.
yeah, he did Tokyo Joe, which is good, with Humphrey Bogart.
Very good, very underrated.
Yeah, that's a very cool movie.
I mean, you could sort of classify that more as a noir than The Glass Key, almost to a certain extent.
Yeah, because I didn't think there's that much. There's not. It's not a romantic movie, if you get what I'm saying, right? It's not as sentimental as like a Casablanca, though it has a very similar character, which is sort of a Western transplant to a foreign country where he can kind of get along with the locals and knows the scene, right? Yeah,
Yes.
Tokyo Joe's cool. Been a while since I've seen it, but I remember really liking it. Go ahead.
Oh no, but back to The Glass Key. You picked this movie, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I did pick this movie because I remember watching it and I really enjoyed it and thought it was awesome. And I loved Alan Ladd and I loved his rapport with Brian Donlevy. I really like their relationship. It's a very unique relationship, right? To where you have this, I don't want to say Alan Ladd is sort of a subservient character, but you get the feeling a lot of times that he's smarter than Brian Donlevy, who is sort of a heavy gangster. He's kind of like a Boss Tweed style guy, right? Or a Huey Long style, like political organizer, gangster. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and I've heard accounts saying that the story was based on Baltimore, which was Dashiell Hammett's hometown. Dashiell Hammett, along with other authors like Colonel Woolrich and James M. Cain and Raymond Chandler, will discuss more as it pertains to the origin of film noir that started basically in pulps of the 30s. But this movie, the relationship was basically inspired the movie. Have you ever seen Miller's Crossing, the Coen Brothers film?
No, I've not.
One of their absolute best. And it's basically a remake of The Glass Key with a few more extra steps thrown in there. But I like that idea of the Alan Ladd character being like, he lives to serve this guy basically. And you get the idea. I mean, he's loyal to him and he likes him and he'll basically do anything for him, but not in like a ass kissing way. It's almost like he does what's best for his friend. You know, he's just an absolute trooper and incredibly stoic and focused. It's very much almost like a Ryan Gosling style character today, like a Drive type character, like a Nicholas Winding Refn type character. Because he submits himself to just like absolute brutality throughout the entire film. But go ahead, which is shocking to me.
And there's a comment that says, I was surprised to see Cinecrisis gave it a low rating. I gave it, I guess, a 2.5 when I first watched it.
Oh
I watched it a second time and I liked it a little bit more, but I like this movie, but I don't love it. I agree about the perception of the Alan Ladd character. It's a very interesting dynamic between the two of them. But I think that's something that's born out of respect that he has for someone who is in a position of superior authority, right? He has a level of respect for his boss, so to say. So much that he wants to do things, but he knows he should not do them, and he needs permission from the boss, even to get the girl at the end of the movie, right? I mean, absolutely, yeah. So he knows what boundaries he should and should not cross, but he's always looking out for his boss in the end. And it's interesting. We're back at Brian Donlevy again, Dr. Quatermass, right? You know, all things come full circle.
What? You're right. Brian Donlevy is Dr. Quatermass.
Yeah, you didn't realize that?
Oh my God, I didn't make that connection. No. Holy
like,
shit!
I've never seen a movie with Brian Donlevy. Now I've seen like multiple ones in the last couple months.
I did not even make that connection, but you're absolutely correct. I didn't even. He's Quatermass. Wow. Yep. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. No, he's good in the movie. It's fun. It was a surprisingly dark movie in my opinion. right?
Mhm.
Surprisingly violent. We have William Bendix here, who was a great actor and would make another appearance in the film The Blue Dahlia, also written by Raymond Chandler. Um, as he's a returning veteran who has a metal plate in his head, which causes him to like have momentary amnesia and like lose control, which is really fascinating. But he is like a very maniacal, tenacious thug in this film who basically just beats up Alan Ladd like brutally. And I was shocked at the application of like the makeup for Alan Ladd's face after
Mhm.
they got done beating him senseless for like 2 days. There's a sequence in the film in which Alan Ladd allows himself to be captured in order to get information and sow seeds of discord in the rival camp of gangsters that are trying to undermine his boss. And they just beat him senseless,
Yes,
which is
very much.
was kind of shocking to me when I first saw it.
And how often is it that you would see the ramifications of that, where the character actually ends up in the hospital afterwards, and that's
Right.
a significant part of the story afterwards.
And also too the sequence in which the publisher of the newspaper is convinced to kill himself because Alan Ladd
Oh,
shacks up with his wife like right in front of him.
that's the scene where he really asserts himself as the true alpha male of the movie, right? I mean,
He's a sigma male for sure.
he's the way we described him at first, you would almost seem to imply that he's like a beta, right? To Brian
Not at
Donley's
all.
character, but he's
Yeah.
not at all. In fact, he's the alpha, but he knows his place, right? It's almost like it's because there's a respect, there's a respect and admiration for each other that they have.
He knows
Uh,
he'll be better as a number two.
yes, yes, and that's a good point. That's a really really good point too. Is that some people are destined to be in charge and to lead, and some people are really good as that right hand man. They know they don't have the aspiration or the know how to be on top. So why bother, right?
Or just the gravitas to just, supplicate yourself to the public like Brian
Yes.
Donlevy has to do. Right. That's not Alan Ladd's game. He's a chief of staff guy.
Part of the
He's a
reason that
killer.
part of the reason that I did give the movie a lower rating the first time I watched it is some of the motivations of the characters are a little off and kind of sketchy, right? I mean, the whole motivation of Brian Donlevy's character throughout the movie is that he's infatuated with Veronica Lake, right? Just
Yeah.
from one time meeting her where she slaps him in the face, and now he changes his entire life to appease her, to suck up to her family, to get her father elected to the whatever county commission or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
it seemed a little flimsy to me just on that. And then the second thing was okay, now I lost it, but I'll come back to it. But that was one of them.
I've
Was
not
like
read the book, but I'm sure it's a very complicated plot, right? Like it kind of whisks you around really fast, and all of a sudden you're with this wealthy to do family, and they have a sort of ne'er-do-well son who gambles, and then there's a sister character that's involved with her, and then he's murdered, and Don Levy becomes sort of like he's very
he becomes a suspect.
blasé about the guy being killed, but like he didn't do it. So it's just like it's sort of like you're right. There's sort of weird motivations going on, and
There's a lot of like I wouldn't want to say incestuous relationships, but like kind of Don Levy has a sister, and the sister is romantically involved with Veronica Lake's brother, who's the murder victim.
yeah,
So Don Levy is implicated as a suspect in the murder because he didn't like him, and it becomes all this, circular connections between the people. So it gets a little much, and as I said, some of the motivations are kind of like didn't really buy into it, and Oh, I was going to say, you mentioned William Bendix, who I'm also a very big fan of. If you look
yeah,
up most things about The Glass Key, you're going to find his performance as one of the standout, parts of the movie, which I agree with. It's a
yeah.
pretty remarkable performance for what otherwise is pretty bland. Sorry, no offense, but like, also a big fan of him in Lifeboat. I think we've talked about Lifeboat briefly.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah, the
remember
Hitchcock
you like
film.
not a big fan of Lifeboat for some, or am I
No,
confused?
it's good. I like it. It's fine.
He
Yeah,
plays the one of the passengers who's like of German extraction, and the German captain is like baiting him into your allegiance to which country and all that. So it's kind of and he throws himself overboard. Uh, like kind of like he can't take, or no, I think the German captain throws him overboard, right? And says like he threw himself or something like that.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
always a very volatile presence on screen,
Yes.
right? Trying to think of what other films he's been in. He's been in a lot. He was in a lot of noirs as a heavy. The
Yeah.
Big Steal with Robert Mitchum. Yeah, Trembling Code says, I'd simp for Veronica Lake. Probably I can't blame him. Yes, Veronica Lake, gorgeous. Starred in a lot of film noirs. Probably her most famous film, Sullivan's Travels, maybe with Joe McCrea.
Mhm.
You
Yep.
say her biggest movie. And then she starred in 4 films with Alan Ladd, including This Gun for Hire, which is really good. And
But personally, do you think, besides her obvious attractiveness, she's pretty dull and stiff, and she doesn't have much
I
charisma
would
on screen.
I would agree with you. She has kind of this cute pouty voice, and obviously her signature hairstyle, but nothing like Bacall, right? There's no smoldering energy there. You know what I mean? There's
Or
no
Jane Tyranny, or even if you wanted to compare her to someone like Marilyn Monroe, for instance, who
no.
I would not, because I think Marilyn Monroe had so much more talent than this. You know, you're talking about someone who's known for their, you know, just they became a star because of their look, their attitude, all this.
Yes.
The Lake was kind of more like a flash in the pan, for my money. That might
Yeah,
be.
and I think that, unfortunately with Veronica Lake, she sort of died penniless, if I'm not wrong. I think she ended up having to become a cocktail waitress in like
Yeah,
the
she died
60s.
in 73 at age 50, so not a very
Yeah.
long life.
No, it's terrible.
And we'll get to another actress that also had a very tragic life when we talk about Jean Tyranny. That's also another one that's
Right.
pretty sad story to her life.
Okay. Yeah, The Glass Key. I really enjoyed. I like the mood and the vibe. I think it has something in film noir that would be sort of an emerging phenomenon, which is that um, I have a quote here from a film scholar named Vivian Sobchak, who wrote an essay on film noir that's considered rather seminal. And in this, she sort of tries to dismantle the idea that film noir was a product of um, post-war malaise or whatever kind of thing they try to make up, right? I think I read a quote to you from Eddie Muller, obviously the famous, TCM Noir Alley host, where
Yep.
he had said something to the effect of, I got it underlined here in this great book called Pulp Fiction, From Pulp Fiction to Film Noir, which examines, and you have Eddie Muller's book there
I got
too.
the Eddie Muller book here.
Which this basically examines like the connection between like, how did film noir, how Depression era pulps really informed film noir, right? And Muller says, I think the notion that film noir grew directly out of the Second World War is a little specious, a little too convenient for grad student theses. And I think that's right. Something else that gets mentioned a lot is women were in the workplace. And so the emergence of the femme fatale is sort of like a Freudian reaction to the idea of women gaining power within society, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I read an interesting essay that's included in the Criterion Blu-ray for Mildred Pierce that sort of knocks that idea down too. But Sobchak makes the case that she thinks film noir is sort of born of a time after World War II where there was a housing crisis, right? Too many people. There was a lot of movement into the city, and you see the emergence of a lot of non-familial spaces in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And these are places where film noirs take place. Bus stations. I think she mentions here roadside cafes. That's always boarding houses, hotel rooms, diners, nightclubs, bars. And even when you have, you know, homes in these film noirs, they're always either incredibly palatial or like Laura's house. They just kind of look like a really fancy, like swanky cocktail lounge kind of,
Yeah.
right? So there's sort of this absence of like familiarity and home in these movies, and everything takes place in public areas at night. And she thinks this is because people had more expendable income, and so people were spending more time in these places. Um,
And it's
but I think,
definitely more the
yeah,
extremes of those public places. So either you have a very, very high end, high class, and you show the disparity between the two, right?
yeah,
You have
yes,
people in the extreme upper echelons of society, and then the haves, and then you have the have-nots who are living in, basically tenements or, kind of sleazy areas of town, slums. And
yeah,
that becomes a big part of the driving the wedge between these two groups. And as people try to mobilize their position in society as well, this becomes a means to an end, right?
And there you have enter the character of the detective, which the reason why the detective is so interesting, whether it be Mickey Spillane or Marlowe or Sam Spade, is that the detective is a sort of classless character who
Mm,
can navigate the upper class and the lower class with ease, right? He kind of moves throughout these spaces. And I think because a lot of these film noirs have their origins in some of these writers pictured here, James M. Cain, Hammett, Chandler, guys writing during the Depression. Dashiell Hammett was a famous Hollywood leftist, right? I mean, he was a communist, right? Called up in front of the HUAC hearings, but a lot of his writing was very much almost like the Upton Sinclair style. Like I'm going to stick it to the forces of capital and stuff, right? So he has sort of like a chip, a little bit, right? I mean, this was a sort of famous like political leftist. So I think a lot of that idea of the have and have nots and that sort of dichotomy sort of ends up bleeding into the 40s because of the source material. But that's my sort of
no, that's a
long-winded one
great
there.
point, and that's a
Yeah.
great way to think about the glass key as well, right? It's kind of ironic what the entire plot of the movie is before we get into the murder and all that, is that you have this very shady character, right? Brian Donlevy plays basically an organized crime boss to a certain extent, right? And he's going to throw his weight behind this legitimate candidate for office who's running to sweep up corruption and all this. So the irony of that character helping to elect this other guy, does that taint his reputation as well, or is he trying to come clean? You can kind of have that dynamic between the characters as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, Hammett was famously married to Lillian Hellman, who she wrote the film Dead End. Have you ever seen this?
mm-mm.
1937. It's a William Wilder movie, and it's got Joel McCrea and Humphrey Bogart. It's shot basically, it was adapted from a play that she wrote. It's set on the docks in New York City. It's tremendous. It's a great movie, but
Okay.
very much a sort of social commentary movie about, you know what I'm saying? So these stories sort of emerged from here. And I was reading in this book that I picked up at a bookstore called The Censorship Papers. It's from like the 80s. Sort
Mhm.
of like this is sort of an out of date book. You wouldn't make this now because you can look this stuff up basically, right? But I know that uh, Columbia and MGM wanted to adapt Double Indemnity and The Postman Always Rings Twice, the James M. Cain novels, when they were published in the 30s, but the Breen office just wouldn't allow them to do it. And Chandler, because his story was, or Cain, because his story was so popular, and it supposedly increased the circulation of Liberty magazine, where it was first published, by almost 8 million people, was expecting 50,000, but they told him we can only give you 15 because there's a likelihood that we buy this. And then Breen shuts us down and says no. Right. So a lot of these were put on hold until after the war to be made. But anything else?
I was gonna say, since we how would we classify this movie in the style? So I think more thematically it fits in. Stylistically, it's a little lacking and bland. Would you say? Our friend, Mr. Director, Mr. Heisler, is not
Mr.
exactly an auteur here, but I think
No.
thematically it fits into the style rather well as a prototypical noir. No.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think it does for, first of all, Trembling Colors says, speaking of locations, I love that old warehouse or whatever where it was where the thugs were holding and beating up Alan Ladd. Yeah, like that's a great film noir location. That
Yes.
shitty bar apartment above, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it doesn't have necessarily the themes of film noir, but I think it maybe does in the fact that Veronica Lake is the
I was gonna say, would you consider her to be a femme fatale at all? I personally would not. She's
no, she's not entirely truthful, but you could see the seeds, right?
she's very iffy. She's more good than bad by any means in the movie. That's what I'm saying. I when I said the themes, I meant more like the overarching themes of political corruption and the
Yeah.
Alan Ladd character fitting into this kind of in between world where, yes, he operates on the wrong side of the law, perhaps by working for Don Levy, but that's all part of like an established system of criminality, right? So it's kind of like
Yes.
it really falls right along the lines. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, it's a transitory film from the gangster picture to the film noir, I think. Because you have this sort of proto detective, right?
Mhm.
He's a
Yep.
gangster detective.
Yes, that's
And
a
then you
good
have this sort of proto film noir gal,
way.
right? Who is coming to visit everyone in offices, very much like Bacall would in The Big Sleep. You have this like very nasty, very dark underworld element to it, right?
Yep.
And some of the cinematography and things you would associate with film noir, which I don't think is nothing, right? I think
Okay.
the visual style is, you know what I mean? I don't think that's nothing. I don't think that's just.
What visual style was there in this movie? I didn't
Are
pick
you
up on
kidding
it.
me? The set design where he's getting
Okay,
beaten
what
up
were
is like
the designs different?
tremendous.
Like, I mean, was there anything specific? Like, usually, okay, so we didn't talk about the visual styles of what you expect from a Double Indemnity would be like the pinnacle, the classic
Yeah,
example of
it's
visual
awesome.
noir, right?
It doesn't
So
hold
is
a candle to that. It's very stock cookie cutter kinda like, "Let's get this
yeah,
thing filmed."
exactly. There's no
It's
real
like a Cagney gangster movie. Yeah.
yeah, there's no real light and dark contrast, high contrast example of that, or there's no shading. There's no chiaroscuro shading or anything like
N
that.
not particularly,
It's
no.
not a very fancy movie. It's more, yeah, like you said, boilerplate or cookie cutter, kind of like let's. I mean, would this be a B movie more?
Yes, I think so, and I think the fact that it was so popular elevated it. I mean, I think The Blue Dahlia maybe is better. That was a film that was written by Raymond Chandler. You know, he came and adapted a lot of his books and wrote scripts and helped punch up dialogue in Hollywood. He was a notorious drinker, and, when he wrote The Blue Dahlia, he told, I think it was Paramount that made that film, that he just needed, like, a case of whiskey, and he was just gonna drink for, like, 3 weeks, and then he'd have it done, right? And he would just drink, pass out, have someone wake him up, he would write for, like, an hour, and then drink again, right? Um, famous alcoholic. But The Blue Dahlia is a great and kind of haunting little movie. This Gun for Hire is very sort of Hitchcockian, that it starts out as, like, a film noir and then becomes, like, a international espionage caper, which is kind of surprising. And then I have not seen Saigon. I can't imagine what Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake get up to in Saigon, to be honest.
That
But,
was cool.
it does look kinda cool, yeah. But, yeah,
Okay.
sorry if I, misled you here, but I think it was there's a few takeaways. Watch, William Wyler's Dead End, written by Lillian Hellman, Dashiell Hammett's wife, and, then watch the Coen Brothers' Miller's Crossing, which is, in my opinion, one of their top 5 movies.
I mean,
Um,
I definitely, I'm happy that I saw this movie, but this is not like one that I would recommend to people if they wanted to get into noir. I wouldn't
no.
say watch The Glass Key first. I would say this is after you've seen a lot of the other big ones which we're going to talk about. I think those would be ones to recommend off the bat.
Yeah, I think you're right. So let's move on. Oh, okay, we were talking about the depression and the sort of origin here of film noir and Black Mask magazine, and then we will move
Oh,
into Laura. You go ahead and explain Laura, Ryan.
yes. So Laura is a murder mystery film. It stars Gene Tierney and Dana Andrews. Gene Tierney plays the titular character Laura, who is the murder victim. So the movie begins that this character has been found murdered in her apartment, and we meet Dana Andrews as McPherson, a police detective who is investigating said murder. And he encounters a wide variety of colorful characters who are all suspects in this murder. And as we go along, Dana Andrews' character may realize that he is falling in love with the dead murder victim as he puts together the pieces of her life. So there's an unexpected twist which occurs midway through the movie. Spoiler for a movie that came out, what, like 70 years ago or 80
Don't
years ago?
say that. Like, oh,
Yeah.
spoiler! It was you haven't seen it yet. I mean, dude, I can't
So,
watch the entire 100-year back catalog of the history of cinema. But go ahead.
so Laura was not actually the murder victim. So someone else was murdered
Had her
in
face
her
blown off
place.
with a shotgun.
Yes. So understandably, they actually do realize this at a certain point in the movie, but as the first like 48 hours, they don't realize that. And Laura had gone away into hiding or something like that. And she
Just to get
emerges.
away. in the
just to
country.
get away from the hustle and bustle. She's being kind of pressured on all ends from these different male suitors that she has to get married and hook up with her. So we have one of them is Vincent Price, who's basically, I guess you could call him like a gigolo. He's definitely someone who's after her for all the wrong reasons, right? He's after her for status in society. He's after her for money and all that. And he's constantly playing around with other women. And then we have the other male suitor is Clifton Webb as Waldo Lydecker, probably one of the most colorful characters in film noir history, right? It's kind of an older man, somewhat effeminate to a certain extent, very
Both
vile.
of her suitors are rather effeminate. I thought Vincent Price
Yes.
was supposed to be gay because when they're originally interviewing him, I think he says something to the effect of like, "I'm not a usual man" or something. I was like, "What?"
See,
You know?
I didn't pick up on that, but I thought the exact same thing of Clifton Webb's character. That
Yeah,
was
he seems like kind of an old gay guy.
yeah. Very, very vile, biting, sinister kind of character. One that would hold a grudge for 100 years and would get back at you. And that is the basic setup and premise of this. So, like we were saying at the beginning, is this or is this not a noir? And you can make the case either way because it is, in that stylistically it has a lot of the elements that we look for. But Laura is certainly not a femme fatale in any way, shape, or form. She's the victim. Yeah, she's kind of a little shady here and there, but she lies to the police, for instance, and things like that. But there's not anything horribly wrong with her. And the detective character. Oh, go ahead.
Have you ever heard of this derisive term that's been used online? The manic pixie dream girl.
No.
You ever heard this?
What's that?
This is like a pejorative term for a way like a man would write a female character that everyone pines after. Like, I'm not talking Bo Derek 10 kind of thing, but I'm talking like 500 Days of Summer style character where it's like she's just so magical and everyone's in love with her because she's like unique and different and funny and like, likes the Smiths like you do or whatever. Is Laura the OG that? Because like she acts unorthodoxly and men just fall at her feet and are in love with her, right?
Everyone's after her. Everyone falls in love with her madly. Although, that's the thing with Vincent Price's character, Shelby. Is he actually in love with her or not? I don't think he is. I think he's using her as a means to
For what though? She didn't have any money.
I think there's some kind of status.
Okay. Didn't she just work for a magazine?
Mover and shaker, right? He wants to move up in the world, because otherwise he's going to end up with the older aunt character, right?
Yeah.
Playing around with her too.
Here comes trembling colors with my back. Ramona Flowers from Scott Pilgrim is the ultimate example of that trope. And this whole manic pixie dream girl thing, that's not a phrase that I would ever want to be seen using, but like I know it's out there and exists, and it does describe sort of a certain phenomenon. But yeah, Laura seems like the proto of that. I also thought that maybe she reminded me a little bit of like Laura Palmer from like Twin Peaks too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison as well.
Potentially an homage there. For me though, Ryan, I have to tell you, I found this movie to be really boring.
Really? How?
Yeah, I couldn't care less at the backstory of Laura, like talking to the guy at the restaurant and asking him if he wanted to be a pen spokesman.
Endorse her pen? No, he uses a goose quill dipped in blood or something like that.
Because ultimately, and I'm sorry I have to say this, I expected a little more out of Otto Preminger because Anatomy of a Murder is one of like my favorite movies. I think it's like amazing. I didn't find that there were any real like layers to this thing. I mean, like we have all these extensive flashbacks of her life, but you're watching them and I'm waiting for like clues to be illuminated about, why she was killed or maybe who did it. Right. And you really don't get that. You just get the story of everyone's relationship with her. But had the screenwriters decided that they wanted Vincent Price to be the murderer, it would have worked too. Right.
I think
you know what I'm saying?
No, I don't. I disagree. I think if you watch it, if you watch it more and more multiple times, you'll see the clues are being set up to incriminate Waldo. I think more and more.
Okay. Well, I
he's
mean, obviously there's those little bits where he's like, well, I'm taking my clock back. Right. Okay,
yeah,
fine.
he does it very subtly, but it's also in his nature and his personality, right? So as you get to know the Vincent Price character, you seem that for all this high talk, and yes, he's a very suspicious character based on his actions. He's constantly covering up where he is and where he was, but it's a red herring, right? So the Waldo character is inherently just a bad person, right? He's always gotten what he wants, and the reason he kills her is basically, if I can't have you, no one else will, right?
Right.
That's the entire motivation. He's so, I don't even think he's really in love with her at a certain point. None of these guys are. I think they think they want her, but if they can't have her, Waldo will kill her so that someone else
Right.
can. Um, I thought the interpersonal dynamics between the characters were fascinating to watch. I think Gene Tierney has a real strong screen presence. The chemistry with the other characters is really, really powerful. Dana Andrews is also one of my favorite actors. I really, really enjoy him, anything he's in. As a noir lead, though, again, I was getting back to the point, is he's pretty much a straight arrow kind of detective, is he not? Right? He's not doing anything below the level. Like he's pretty
No,
straight.
I admired his sort of like driven nature and like his frankness, but yeah, there's really not a lot to him really. I
He's
was waiting for maybe more, but you had mentioned that you thought he started to fall in love with the dead woman. I don't. Okay.
No, of course he does. That's the whole twist of the movie, right? As he further explores the life of this character, he falls under her spell too, right? He becomes the third victim of Laura, right? If Clifton Webb and Vincent Price both were, infatuated and taken under by her, he becomes even so, without ever having met her, right? He just sees the
Right.
portrait, he finds out about her life, and then when he does meet her, I mean, did you not see like the sigh of the gleeful look in his face when he asked her, "Did you decide? Are you going to marry Vincent Price or not?" And she tells him no, and gives this like very faint smile, and it's like he's very excited, because now his chances are up.
I get that. I just didn't. I get that why you would like Laura. She's very attractive. Gene Tierney is very attractive. But I didn't find there to be any sort of like. I mean, I don't get what everyone saw in her that was so amazing that they fell in love with her painting. You know what I mean? Like it.
She's a
Um,
she's kind of
she's
like
just like nice.
she's not high society, but she's cutting it close, right? Is this the house of a dame or a doll? That's what Clifton Webb called.
Yeah,
He goes,
yeah.
"Oh, good looking." I think he says something like, "Oh, good looking dame." He goes, "Do you ever know any? Is this the house of a dame? Have you ever known any girls that aren't dames or dolls?" You have that dynamic between the different types, the different men that are all suiting after her, and how do they classify this woman? How do they all have different perceptions of her, do they not? Like they all think of her in different ways, yet they're all madly in love with her. I just think it's kind of interesting.
No, I didn't. I
About it.
didn't. I didn't. I didn't hate it. I just was a little underwhelmed by it. I was expecting. I mean, her coming back and being alive was interesting, but I was thinking, oh boy, what happened? Right? Is she in on this too? This is a bigger conspiracy. But then she's just like, oh, I was just gone. What happened? Right? I was like,
Basically, yeah, a friend was was staying in her apartment. Well, no, actually, that's not true. Um,
having an
Vincent
affair
Price,
with.
Vincent
Yeah.
Price, and this other girl were in her apartment, you know, doing who knows what, right? And
Hmm.
Waldo comes to the door to confront Laura because he knows that she's not going to be with him. And under the cover of darkness, he shoots and kills the woman who he thinks is Laura.
Yes. Yes. Which is plausible. And I didn't think it was a total cheat because, then they say, hey, we did the lab test. It's not Laura. Right. And he goes, yeah, I know. She's right here. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
cool as ever,
but,
right?
but
Super
then,
slick.
she goes off and he's like, don't leave the house. And then like she goes with Vincent Price.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh, is Laura like a murderer? Were they trying, what I mean? What's going on here? And that, no, it's just, no.
See, this is like the Glass Key in reverse for us, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I just thought there'd be a little more going on here because I've heard about this movie ad infinitum that's so good or whatever. But I thought it was okay. And now tell me the story of Gene Tierney.
Oh man, what a sad life. If you do you have the DVD or Blu-ray for this, or
I do
had you?
not know.
Oh, okay. Because if you do, there's a excellent biography, a featurette on there, both of her and of Vincent Price, which are worth watching. So Gene Tierney became, a big star, but was very much under the control of her parents, her father, right? Father actually stole a lot of the money that she earned during a time where he was controlling her income and her funds. So there's that.
Yeah.
But as she got older, later in life, she developed severe mental illness, depression, I believe bipolar disorder, and actually was committed for a time and underwent electric shock treatment. So had
No.
a very, very, very troubled personal life. I believe she married multiple times. She did live a pretty decent long life though. She lived to age 70, died in 1991, but just seemed like not a happy life, and it's sad for someone that starred in a lot of great movies and contributed a lot to film. Just there's not all happiness behind the scenes, right?
That's very sad. I I suppose that her sad story, I think maybe in retrospect adds a little more gravitas to the idea of Laura, where this is obviously the ultimate testament to her as an actress and as a screen presence.
Hmm.
So there can be a little more there. As far as is this a noir? Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, it's like had she been killed at the end, I think it would have been more so. It would have been like slam dunk, yes, like perfect, right? A
Or
sort of
if, like
ironic
you
twist of
said,
fate.
or if, like you said, she had been implicated in the murder, that would have been
Yeah.
a. But this is leading more to a happy feeling. This is a happy noir, right? This is like a
So was the last
romantic.
one.
This is more of a romantic noir, though. I mean, this is much more uplifting in the spirit of what it's going for the happy ending.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I
I
get
guess
it.
the
I
Glass
get
Key
it.
did
And
have a happy ending. The Glass Key sort of had a happy ending, but
I'd say the Glass Key is totally happy. It's like, all
yeah,
right, kids, you're gonna get together. Okay.
not with that
Like,
rock, you're not.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Give me back my
uh,
ring.
yeah, yeah. Trembling Colors here. Veronica Lake had a very similar sad life, and I was thinking also too about Gail Russell. Um, Gail Russell. She was in The Uninvited with Ray Milland.
Did she also
She was
have a similar tragic
yeah,
life?
really bad drinking problem, and drove her car into like a roadside diner by accident, and John Wayne liked her and hired her in some movies to keep her working, incredibly beautiful. But then she ended up there's a song that she sings in The Uninvited, for Stella by Starlight. And she called into the radio station in Los Angeles and requested that song, and then she took pills and died.
No,
So
that's really sad.
it is sad. Yeah. Um, now I have a question on Vincent Price.
Mm,
Was was this an unusual role for him? Did he start out playing straight roles kind of like Leslie Nielsen and then just sort of fell into the horror thing?
yeah, he started out
Okay.
playing these very, very innocuous, kind of bland roles, and started taking anything that he could get. He did star in another noir that is kind of more up his alley. If you've ever heard of or seen Shock, it's a much more Vincent Price type of role, but in
Yeah.
the 40s in that noir style. And then he took anything, right? He was even in like the Ten Commandments and stuff like that. And then in the
Right.
50s, he started doing the William Castle movies, other things like The Fly, and then he hit full on, horror stardom by the late 50s into the 60s.
Got it. Got
But
it.
yeah, this is one of his. I mean, it's sad to think if he hadn't developed that persona, he would have been a very largely forgettable actor whose career no one would probably remember.
I
Um,
agree. He's okay in this.
oh yeah, this is just very cookie cutter,
Oh,
unimpressive.
hello. Yeah.
He doesn't.
Um,
He's toning down what he became known for, which is the Vincent Price mannerisms, the voice, the larger
yes.
personality. Like he tries to get like this southern drawl a little bit, which
Yeah,
is kind of
I
weird.
know. Right.
Um, it's a very odd role for him. But
He's a very familiar character to the
love,
sort
love this
of
movie.
playboy and Mildred Pierce, right? Where he's just sort of this like society layabout, this sort of dilettante, right?
Mhm.
Um,
He's a social
okay.
climber, right? I mean, at the end of the day, right?
Yeah,
I think that's what he is more so than he's like a gigolo mixed with a social climber. So he thinks he can move up into society with Laura, and he'll have some fun along the way with whatever woman he can find.
exactly. Yeah. Hey, would you mind if we took a break and then I think we're going to come back and talk about two movies that we both really liked that
Sounds
we
good.
both agree on. Is that true?
I think so.
Okay, everybody. I'm gonna just give me 5 minutes. We'll be right back. And we're back.
Alrighty. What's next?
I have a quote for you. It's quoted in this book, Somewhere in the Night. A very interesting exploration of film noir genre. It's not exactly what I would call a film history book. It's sort of like a tone poem psychoanalysis essay book, sort of about the effect of film noir on the effect of the environment on film noir at the time. Here's a quote from Georges Louis Bourges. "The night pleases us because it suppresses idle details, just as our memory does." Or like a dream, right? I thought that was pretty profound. In the sort of way that in film noir movies, nighttime seems like the place to exist and inhabit when things happen. The day almost seems like a dream in a film noir.
Mm-hmm.
Because all the characters that exist in these worlds during the daytime seem totally out of place.
Right. These are characters that thrive at night.
Exactly. Oh, here's Otto Preminger. See, I have all these nice slides that we totally missed. Here's Otto Preminger doing his thing, filming Laura. Double Indemnity. What do you think?
One of the best.
One of the best.
No doubt about it.
Terrific.
A classic of epic proportions. If you're going to watch any of these movies, this is the one to watch, I would say.
Okay. Yeah,
Really?
I think I'd probably agree with you. I think I would probably agree with you. I think this would be the ultimate victim hero one to watch. I might be a little, well, I don't. Yeah, I think Double Indemnity is terrific.
I think this one checks all the boxes that you want from one of these movies.
Yes.
It is consistently the best across all the different criteria of regular, movies that you would expect. I mean, all these other movies you can find fault more with story or character motivations or visual style and all that. I mean, certainly The Big Sleep, the plot is beyond convoluted. I mean, it doesn't detract from the movie per se, no. But if you're gonna analyze the movie on a strict criteria grounds, this Double Indemnity holds up on story, characters, visuals, style, music. Everything is just top notch. So if you haven't seen any of these movies, I would say start with this one because I think you'll be impressed.
It's really terrific, and I was lucky enough recently to see it about 2 weeks ago at my local art house theater. They were doing a noir retrospective, and I got to go see it, and it was just terrific. I mean, it just works like crazy. The dialogue is just whip smart. Thanks to Raymond Chandler here, who you can see in this New Yorker cartoon article working with Billy Wilder, the famous and terrific director, right? But this movie is it's so, I'm trying to think of a good word, menacing, vile. Just all the people in it are so,
they're so sleazy. They are.
Yeah, but it's terrific. I mean, it's an absolutely terrific movie.
They're vicious. They're killers. They're vicious, and they make no bones about it. What's really interesting is, I was going to say the motivations behind the characters are fascinating. And I think you don't maybe see it the first time is that you think Fred MacMurray as Walter Neff, he's into Barbara Stanwyck. Obviously, there's a sexual connection there, right?
Absolutely.
But at a certain level, is there? I don't even think there is at a certain point. I think at a certain point, have you ever considered his motivation being from working inside the insurance business? He wants to commit the perfect crime. Do you not see that also as another motivation?
Yeah. I do think he likes her though, and is not as rotten as she is.
No, not at all. I think if he can have her, he's more than happy to have her, but he's also happy to cut her loose too.
Well, especially when he realizes she's sort of treacherous, right? But this movie, I couldn't believe it. I was sitting on the edge of my seat during the moment in which they staged the murder. So if you guys haven't seen the movie, Double Indemnity is about Fred MacMurray, who's an insurance man. His boss is an incredibly scrupulous and he's very in depth. Like, what would you say? He's
He's
great at
a
his
very
job.
detailed, very
Yeah,
number
played by
cruncher. He's a statistics man. He
Edward G. Robinson.
very
Yeah,
thorough investigator.
and he encounters Barbara Stanwyck. He's going door to door. He's trying to re-up the insurance policy of her husband, who's some sort of oil man who's recently struck out on his own, and his business is not going as well as it used to. And he's not the nicest, I guess, according to her. She beats it. He yells at her, or ignores her, and just she's sort of a kept woman, right?
But
According
we
to
don't
her,
know that. We
we
don't
don't
know.
know that. We don't know that. You want to believe it at the time, right? Because you're like Fred. So they concoct a scheme to basically have him take out an insurance policy without him knowing it. And then they're going to plan his murder by using the occasion of his college reunion to throw him off the back of a train, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, he hurt himself in the oil fields and he has a cast, which sort of helps. It seems to help their story more because it's more likely that he would trip and fall. And so Fred McMurray, they hit him over the head and throw him on the railroad tracks and kill him. And then Fred McMurray disguises himself as the husband with a cast and leaps off in front of a witness, right? Or he disappears after the witness is sent to get his cigarettes, right? And it all seems like it's going to work out. It's a pretty cut and dried case, but Keyes, Edward G. Robinson, says, why didn't he file a claim when he broke his leg?
Yes.
He must not have known there was an insurance policy on him. And it all starts to unravel. And the element of the story that I forgot about was that after they complete the murder, how they start to turn on one another, how they can't talk to each other, because if they do, there's a line Keyes says where he goes, you're drawn to each other after this murder. Like they're stuck straight down the line. They're stuck together on this thing. Right. Mm-hmm. And they start to turn on each other and squabble and bicker and get torn apart and ultimately betray each other. And it leads to their doom. It's terrific.
What's really great here is the dialogue. That's one of the key features of this movie, which makes it a absolute highlight. Is not only is the dialogue all done in this very like staccato, sharp delivery for everyone, it also has highly sexualized innuendo, and everything is not a double entendre, but like a thinly veiled, of a thinly veiled sexual nature. For instance, when they first meet.
Oh, let's see if we can do this. There's a speed limit in this town, Mr. Neff.
Oh, yeah. There's a speed limit. He goes, how fast was I going?
I'd say about 35 miles an hour.
Try about 90.
Yeah. Suppose I give you a ticket.
Suppose I take that ticket and rip it up.
Yeah. I don't remember the rest. Yeah.
And then it's
suppose
like,
you get down my
suppose I cry on your shoulder. Oh, suppose you cry on my husband's shoulder. Oh, that tears it.
Yeah. It's just great. And it's all Raymond Chandler. I mean, Kane obviously was a master at these kind of steel trap plots, right? This is basically, I mean, if you were to read Double Indemnity and The Postman Always Rings Twice, they're both great books, very short, like 110 pages each. They're sort of both variations of the same story. Mm-hmm. Postman was very popular, so he did it again, basically as Double Indemnity. They both involve insurance fraud. They both involve a sort of a husband that the wife wants out of the picture, so she ensnares a sort of a traveling ne'er-do-well into her scheme. And it's but Chandler was there to punch up the dialogue. I mean, that was all him. I mean, if you're impressed by the dialogue in The Big Sleep, it's all there verbatim in his book. Verbatim.
Yeah, The Big Sleep's another one with great dialogue. I don't think it matches quite what's here, because this is much more sexy. This is much more hard-boiled. The Bogart Bacall stuff it's much more romantic, and the way they play off each other, it's of a different kind. This is like very raw and kind of dangerous.
I know, but everything Marlowe says is so great. Suppose I make your business my business. You wouldn't like it. The pay's too low, right?
But that's so much more just like flirtatious, when this is like very, very heavy. Like this is like
totally.
Yeah. This is like more hardcore. Like they're gonna get it on, It's
a very sexy movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Barbara Stanwyck is absolutely phenomenal here. I love her. I love pretty much anything she's in, but she's at her finest here. She is one of the, I mean, if not the greatest, one of the greatest femme fatales in film noir. I mean, would you not
Yeah,
agree with
absolutely. Absolutely. Especially with the revelations about her
that? Her past.
possibly killing the wife as her
Yes.
nurse, right? And how she was going to frame, Walter Neff, right? I
Mm.
mean, and all right, and basically kill the daughter too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. She was
Um,
trying to rile up the daughter's boyfriend to murder her and get her out of the picture too.
a true Spider Woman.
Yeah. Interesting choice for Fred McMurray, who was
Yes,
not really a dramatic actor by any means, more of a comedic, lighthearted guy. And of course, went on to My Three Sons.
right.
But I really enjoy seeing actors like that choose roles like this, to
Yeah,
see
I
them
agree.
out of their element, doing something that is totally out of character. I know they always fear that it's going to ruin their career or typecast them or something like that, but I think it adds to their range. I always enjoy seeing comedy actors do dramatic roles.
Same.
It's fascinating to a certain extent. You know, like Robin
He's
Williams
terrific.
when he did dramatic roles, it's always brilliant. I mean,
Adam Sandler. Yeah,
yeah, same. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no,
oh,
I
oh,
mean,
go
but
ahead.
I just think of so many great scenes. The scene where she comes up to his apartment, but Keys is there and she hides behind the door and that little
Oh, yeah.
tug on the knob to let him know that she's there. Like,
That makes your heart race. I mean, come on, that is
oh,
like,
when the camera pans over to Barbara Stanwyck, when Fred McMurray is in the back seat, and we don't see him killing the husband, but we hear it, and we
yep.
just move over to her face, and she kind of has this look of like ecstasy, like just blank ecstasy, like, yeah, and you're just like, whoa, are they gonna make it? She's talking to the porter on the train. He's hiding with his hat with the crutches. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
What else was I gonna say? Visually, this movie also throws in all the flares for what you typically think of film noir, right? Very, very high, sharp contrast, light and
Yes.
dark. The Venetian blinds motif is there on full display.
Yes.
Um,
Or just
and-
when he walks into her house for the first time and into the living room, and there's almost like this like smoky, there's like this smog in there,
Mhm.
this like
Yeah,
dust,
there's something in the air.
like,
Yeah, it's not quite still. Yeah,
but it's like a house that is just built to be seen and viewed and is not really a home. You know what I mean? It's got all these like ornate trappings and trinkets, but it's like a haunted house. It's like a ghost house, right?
yeah. But I think also when we get back to Walter Neff as a character, he's not a good person at all. I mean,
No.
he not only does he go along with this, he basically comes up with most of the idea for it.
Yeah.
Does he not? She nudges him into submission, but he comes up with all the details. She uses him, and he's also using her to a certain extent. But it seems very transactional. It seems, we want to use each other. That's what I'm saying. That I don't think the romance or it's more like a lustful relationship. They can
100%.
use each
Yeah.
other. They'll have they'll have relations, but they're not going to be together for very long, even if they go through with the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
You
It's
know.
gonna flame out. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I think he's more interested in gaming the system to a certain extent as well.
In that way, he's kind of like the reverse Keys. He wants to
Yes,
see if he can game the system rather than fight the people trying to game it, right?
I think so. He sees how people are screwed out all the time. Keys finds a loophole in every situation and every policy to deny payments to people that submit claims. Sometimes they're fraudulent, and that's fine, but it seems like he sees the insurance company in industry just screwing over people right and left. So, hey, I know how the system works from the inside. I can bypass all of this and get the money. And you know what? Not only are we going to get the money, we're going to use this very, very obscure loophole in the system for a double indemnity clause that never happens. It's designed to not ever give you any money, right? Because it's
Right.
so ridiculous that how would this ever happen? But we entice people to buy planes because of this, and we'll work it out perfectly. And Keyes sees that a little bit, but you know, it's only because of the cast. That's the only thing that he didn't think through.
His
And of
little
course,
man.
something,
Yeah.
right? There's going to be one thing, and it only takes one thread to unravel the entire thing.
Here you have two characters who are deracinated from everyday life, right?
Mm.
They're sort of loners. But there's nothing about this movie that cries, um, this is a post-war reaction,
I
right?
don't think so. No.
No. So like I just roundly reject that kind of thing. And I'm gonna quote here from this essay in the Mildred Pierce by Imogene Sarah Smith, where she says it's often said that men's discomfort with women's entry into the workforce during World War II conjure the figure of the femme fatale, which demonized strong, ambitious women. This theory makes no sense since the femme fatale is never a woman who works or is independent. She is always a woman who uses men to get what she wants,
Yeah.
relying on the most traditional of feminine wiles. Um, so I think that's very true. So where is this anxiety coming from exactly? Why does this trope repeat so many times in these films? I'm not sure. I have to think about that a little more. Um,
I think it's more like a very basic level, kind of like, would you say a reaction of to your id, right? You see the most
yeah.
beautiful woman of your dreams, right? The most sexy, beautiful woman, and she's a snake. It's a venomous viper that's basically gonna kill you and eat you at the end, right? I mean,
Do
it's
you think it has something to do with, I mean, I know I have a statistic somewhere about the massive influx of people to cities around the turn of the century, right? Do you think it has something to do with the fact that like these are two characters that can only exist within a large city? Like if they
yes,
lived in a small communal town, this sort of thing wouldn't happen, right?
no, not at
You
all.
can't be like a freewheeling character going out. You know, it sort of deracinates you from like a community in which you sort of are other people rely on you and you're an integral piece of this small system. Whereas when
Yeah,
you're in a city, you're just a
you're just
cog
a
in the
cog.
machine.
You're a cog. Yep.
You're a
Hmm.
tiny piece. You can you're not really accountable to anybody because the place is so big and decentralized that you're sort of adrift, you know? I think maybe
Absolutely.
that's a motivating factor in film noir, but
I also really like that this movie, everything takes places in the upper echelons of. I mean, they're not super rich, they're not super high class, but
right.
they're wealthy, and these are not low class people. These are higher end people, and they're all involved in these horrible machinations, and they're very very, sinister and wicked people. I mean, it shows you that they're rotten to the core.
But they're likable and you want them to succeed in a perverse way. You know, when you want that scam to go off when you're watching it, right? Because
Yeah.
they've worked so hard on it.
Yep.
It's a
Yep.
great idea.
Also, one of the few movies where I'll say overhead narration really does work to its advantage. And we've talked
Yes.
about this because when I was cutting up the Orca review to post again, we were railing on narration from the main character as like a crutch that filmmakers rely on and stuff. But I think for this movie, it really actually benefits it a lot because you really get
100%.
into the head of this character. And also the story is being told in flashback. So we start with him, kind of limping into the insurance office to record his story and his confession. And so now we're immediately hooked into this world because something bad has happened. He's confessing. How is it all gonna end up? And we also get a sense of who he is, where did he come from, and where is he now by him speaking. He has a cadence to his speech. It's not that it's filling in some extraneous amount of background. You know what I mean?
Yeah, keys. You got me the rights. Right? I mean, but you know, that I like that idea too because that framing device is in a lot of film noir movies, right?
Hmm.
It's in a movie called DOA in which a character is poisoned and has to solve the, mystery of his own murder before he dies, right?
Hmm.
And it starts out with him in the police station saying, "Here's what happened to me," right? And it's sort of like this fatalistic idea that like doom is a foregone conclusion, right? It's almost like a warning to somebody else, like don't make the mistakes I did, right? And
Yes.
then it's over. And I think everyone knows they shot a scene in which Fred McMurray was supposed to go to the gas chamber, which was a little much. I think
Oh,
we
I didn't know that. I didn't know that actually.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's I think it's available somewhere, but I know there were still photos of it where they were going to make sure that he was justly punished good and hard, and there was going to be a scene of him in the gas chamber. I think the movie ends perfectly where Keyes is constantly needing Fred McMurray, Robinson to needs Fred McMurray to light his cigarette for him, and at the end he lights it for Fred McMurray. I
Yeah.
mean, he chastises him and he says, "Yeah, you fucked up," but in the end, we're still sort of have a sort of paternal relationship, right?
Yes, that was a
Um,
very touching moment. Yeah.
it's great, and it would have been ended. Now, I think we're going to talk about next. We talk about Big Sleep. There are a lot of deleted scenes from that film that I think are good, but
Yeah. Oh, just the last thing. I
yeah,
love that moment at the end because it's yeah, you did all these horrible things, but you don't just you don't throw everything out with that person. Yeah, you can condemn them, you can say
yes,
you can help turn them in, you can do all these things, but at the end of the day, they're still someone that you did care about. So, you know, if you can provide just that one comforting moment, it shows he has more humanity in him than Fred McMurray had throughout the entire movie, you know?
and there's kind of that code. I mean, we're not going to talk about the Maltese Falcon, but if you remember that movie,
I
Sam
just watched
Spade
it
is.
recently again too,
Oh, he
yeah.
did. He's trying to
Mhm.
solve the mystery of his murdered partner, right?
Yep.
And what does he
Does
say?
he
If your
really
partner's
care?
murdered, you ought to do something about it, even though he didn't really
Yes.
like the guy, right?
He barely cares. I think he's more yeah, he feels an obligation to him to solve his murder and also to clear himself, I think, because
And
he's
also to ruin
implicated.
his own shot at happiness out of principle, right?
Mhm.
So that's like there's this idea too of like this sort of code, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, which reappears. Double Indemnity is terrific. It's a great movie. I mean, and then also watch Sunset Boulevard, the other Billy Wilder
Oh,
noir
yeah.
film, which is terrific. But this movie is just really fun. There's never a dull moment. The narration's terrific. It's incredibly well written. Um,
I
so
would say watch this one, definitely I always think, like, if you're gonna open the dictionary and they had film noir, I would put a picture of Double Indemnity next to it. That's my personal
I think you're
statement.
probably right. I don't know if it's my favorite. When we talk about Lady from Shanghai, that's one that I have a.
Ooh, that's a really good one.
I like that more just for all of Orson Welles' like
I
experimenting, which doesn't always work, right?
I read
But
in one article the Irish brogue, described as insufferable in that movie, which
I would disagree.
I
Yeah,
disagree entirely, but, like, it was an interesting choice, which that'll be for the next
it
time.
was an interesting choice. Orson Welles. I'm trying to do
So,
my Irish
I
accent.
guess I just a quick would you consider Citizen Kane a noir?
No,
I would not either, but it's all over these books too. Since we were talking about Orson Welles there for a second, I just find it fascinating what is and was what is
no.
not considered by some people.
It's like an epic biopic of a. I mean, like, why would that
Yeah,
be a film
a
noir? Because it's like
political,
no.
political drama to a certain extent, or a tragic life story. Yeah,
And like I promise everybody, we will come up with our own film journal and Cinecrisis definition of film noir here by the end of this. We're gonna work through this. This is sort of like a thing, right?
yeah,
Oh, hey, Kino Corner. Thanks for stopping in, man. He sees I see Stanwyck on screen. Yes, and we were just talking about Double Indemnity, but I think we're ready to move on to the
yeah.
Big Sleep, are we?
Big Sleep.
Let's go. Uh, another great movie. Liked it
Hmm.
more this time than when I first saw it, which I think was in college, and I thought it was boring because I didn't know what was happening. But doesn't
Wow,
matter. I
wow.
love this movie. I watched it twice, and I read the book
Oh, nice. Okay.
and listened to the audio drama that BBC did in like the 70s. But there's a reading of it on YouTube for free of the book with Elliot Gould doing it. And as if Elliot Gould made one of the other great Philip Marlowe adaptations in The Long Goodbye, Robert Altman's movie from 73, which is awesome if you haven't seen it.
Hmm.
So but yeah, thoughts, dude?
Oh, I love this movie. I saw this for the first time probably also in high school. I really liked it then, even though I did not understand anything that happened in the movie at that time. I just thought it was wonderfully complex, and I thought I just wasn't understanding what was going on. I remember years later, I think I watched it again, and I still didn't understand it. And I read the Wikipedia article, and I think it's been since removed, but that this line. But I remember the first line of the plot synopsis: "The plot of The Big Sleep is intentionally complex and convoluted." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well that's great. I'm glad
Yeah.
that I'm not
Yeah.
the only one that didn't
Well,
understand."
there's the famous story too where Hawks called up Chandler and goes, "Hey, who killed the chauffeur?" And he goes, "Fuck, I have no idea." And he poured himself another drink, and he's like, "Who gives a shit?" Right? Like that's not the story, But
It doesn't matter,
it
right?
doesn't matter.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
it's.
matter.
I think you can understand it for the most part, right? And I think that this has been a template for a lot of detective movies going forward. Is that the joy of the detective film is not necessarily, in my opinion, especially as we get into like sort of like the Ross McDonald, like Harper stuff, Archer books and things. It's like it's the characters you meet along the way. It
Yes.
doesn't matter. Like, why does the Big Lebowski have to go to Jackie Treehorn's house and get knocked out with a drugged white Russian? Who gives a shit, right? It's just like, right. What does Larry have to do with the plot? Who cares, right?
People place too much emphasis on procedure and solving the mystery or whatever, and this is not about that. This is
I,
not what this is about. You
I
know what
do
I
think,
mean?
yeah, one of the reasons why it is sort of hard to like figure out what's going on is that it's a pretty lascivious subject matter. So it's like, um, the younger sister is basically getting drugged and like being forced to make
Yeah.
pornography, right?
Yes.
Which in the book is much more explicit. Like when he walks into the house of Gillis, A.G. Gillis or whoever, the guy that gets killed, he's the fake bookstore owner. Um, when he goes into his house, she's naked and there's a camera facing
Geiger.
her. Geiger. Yeah. And she's naked and right. And he wraps her up and takes her home. Whereas
Yeah.
in the movie, she's just kind of sitting there. And I mean,
And there's a photograph that is it's implied what's in it,
you get
but
the
we don't
idea,
know.
but if you were like a regular person watching this who doesn't have to take into account the fact that they can't show things that they would on HBO today, like it
Yeah.
might confuse you as to what's going on. But
Or
yeah,
always basic cable. Yeah.
she's tied up in basically she's like in a drug and pornography sort of racket, right?
Yes.
Uh,
So I
okay.
guess let's go more
Cobra
macro. So
Malibu said it's not about the destination. It was about the bookstore thoughts we banged along the way, which is true. There is a surprising amount of almost Matt Helm style attractive women served up for
oh my
Marlowe throughout
God,
the film.
yes.
The librarian is hot and
The,
into
the,
him. The bookstore gal, the cab driver. I mean, this is almost sort of a proto James Bond kind of thing.
yeah, the amount of like sexy librarians in this movie is like off the scales, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, Kino said my favorite part is when he pretends to be a snob. Yeah, I think snob is
oh, when he goes into the bookstore and he
right.
starts
When he's
asking
asking
about
for a
the
Ben-Hur
with,
1960.
with like
Yeah.
a scribble on a certain page or some stupid thing, a ninth edition of Ben-Hur where the thing is blotted out on this page or something like that.
Yeah, and Trembling Colors says it's more explicit in the 70s Mitchum one. Yes, which is Mitchum did 2 movies as Marlowe in the 70s. He made one called Farewell My Lovely, which is actually really good. And then he made one called A Big Sleep, a remake, and Jimmy Stewart plays the old man.
Oh, nice.
It's okay. It's contemporary. Like it's weird because the first one, Farewell My Lovely, they did it period, and then for the sequel they went cheap, filmed it in London, and it was in the 70s.
Okay.
So it's kind of a weird deal. But go ahead. We've been on a tangent here.
No, I was going to say just I think more macro. What's the movie about, right? So Humphrey
Right.
Bogart plays a private eye named Philip Marlowe, who's hired by a general named Sternwood to help out his family. Specifically, he has 2 daughters. He has a younger daughter named Carmen, who's the one who's being blackmailed by someone.
Yeah.
And she's being blackmailed because as we find out, she's being roped into this world of pornography. Now he meets the general's other daughter named Vivian, who's played by Lauren Bacall, who also has some shady, problems of her own, which she keeps
Gambling
secret.
problems.
Yes,
Yeah.
she's involved in the world of gambling. She owes a lot of debts. So is she sort of connected to this or not? There's some weird implications. What she covering up is what she's covering up related to her sister, or does that have her own stuff in mind?
Owing money all over town, including to known pornographers in the parlance
Yes,
of our times. Right.
exactly. So Bogart gets roped into this investigation, and he sort of he saves the girl. He finds Carmen, brings her home, gets rid of the negatives, and then they try and sweep it under the rug at that point. But for some reason, maybe because he's in love with Bacall's character, or maybe he just has an itch to scratch. He decides to dig a little bit deeper into the situation and uncovers a, more tangled web of lies and conspiracy that the other characters are involved in. So at the end of the day, he can get the girl.
Yeah. And it's awesome. It's a great story, terrific dialogue. Kino Corner says Lauren Bacall was so hot in it. Yes, she was. And actually, this movie was made before To Have and To Have Not, the Hemingway adaptation, which is nothing like the book, really. But
released after, though.
Yeah, released after, because it was put on a shelf, and the studio heads thought that there wasn't enough Bacall Bogart steaminess on screen. So there's actually a terrific scene that's cut from the movie. After Bogart originally saves, what's the younger daughter's name? Carmen. There's just a scene where he's driving with her in the rain, and she's passed out in the car, and he looks over at her, and he just drops her off with the butler and goes home. But when they reshot it, they made Bacall be there. So he took her, took her into the bedroom, and they have a little bit of a back and forth scene there. But it's too bad, because it's a fine scene with them together. But the moment when he's driving her home in the rain is very moody and atmospheric and cool, and kind of builds tension for so there were some good things. There's also a scene that they cut where he gets called into the chief of police office or
or something like that. Yeah.
They give him a more cohesive rundown of the plot that kind of helps you. They just kind of explain it, but they cut it out because they were like, fuck it. Right.
Yeah. I think it's worth noting why all this happened. Right. So this movie was shot and completed, but World War II was coming to an end, right? So Warner Brothers wanted to push all of the movies that had a war-related plot to the forefront and get them out before they became irrelevant. So that's why they put this one on the shelf, and they said this'll keep. There's nothing timely in this that we need to release right away. So, and as they were about to do that, somebody else was reviewing the film or something like that, and they said Lauren Bacall's performance they didn't consider it very good in this movie, like initially. They said she had this huge breakout with To Have and Have Not. And they said that there wasn't that chemistry on screen between Bogart and Bacall like there was in that other movie, which is surprising because now they're married. They're actually a married couple. So they convinced Howard Hawks to add those new scenes, and they changed some of the dialogue. There's ADR in certain scenes as well that they changed to facilitate those changes. And one of the scenes that they added is the scene where they're in the restaurant and they have that very, very,
which is great,
intense conversation, which is very, very sexy.
Depends on who's in the saddle. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, which is one of the highlights of the movie. I mean,
it's terrific, because originally she just went back to his office and they have the same conversation, but there's just no spark.
Yes,
right.
Exactly, and that's what really ignites this movie. Is the chemistry between the two leads. I mean, that sells the movie right there. It doesn't matter what the plot's about, what's the convoluted nature of the gambling and the blackmail and all this stuff. I mean, it's so confusing. You need an atlas to keep track of all the different players.
Right. And the missing detective, Irish detective, and his wife who was dating the other guy. And then I don't understand who was the guy that killed. You remember they were in the apartment and the guy answers the door and he gets shot. Who killed him and why?
Some other guy that ends up getting killed, I believe.
Yeah. And then there's obviously we have our film noir. Oh god, what the hell is this guy's name? He's like the fall guy in every film noir movie, who drinks poison and dies.
Oh my god, yes.
Elijah Cook Jr. Yeah.
Yes. And wait, is that also Wilmer in the Maltese Falcon, the guy that Bogart just beats into submission verbally, belittles him constantly? Yes, that's him.
He's constantly being suffering indignities nonstop.
Yeah, there's way too many plot twists that come out of nowhere, but they're all great. I love it.
Doesn't matter. I mean, yeah,
it's just what else you got? It's like how else can we throw a monkey wrench into this?
But yeah, it's a journey into the underworld, man.
Exactly. And again, high society's been corrupted by more kind of undesirable elements. So now they're trying to work their way up into this General Sternwood's family. They're corrupting the the daughters and getting them into these gambling and other unsightly world. And
I
Marlowe.
love high society. I have a problem where the lower class sort of criminal element is fucking with I love that kind of genre.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
have you ever seen Harper with Paul Newman?
No.
Okay, very similar. Lauren Bacall is actually the rich lady who hires him to solve the case in that movie, and it's terrific. It's based on the Archer novels by Ross McDonald. They made 2, The Drowning Pool in '76, but like that's my favorite sort of subgenre of detective is I'm going to go to the rich guy and he's got some kind of issue. His daughter's in trouble. She's shacking up with the wrong crowd, right? And to a certain extent, I was going to talk about The Big Sleep in my Conan review because sort of the same plot there, where the king goes, my daughter's run off with all these fucking Thulsa Doom weirdos. You got to go get her back, right? So, pulp traditions there of Conan.
Do you like this or the Maltese Falcon more?
This for sure.
Really? I'm
Yes.
kind of torn between the two. This definitely has the romantic element, which is much more an interesting hook. But the Maltese Falcon has, I think, more interesting characters, more kind of a wide band of colorful characters that just pop in and out all the time.
Yeah, you got Sidney Greenstreet, and you've got like
Peter Lorre,
all the Casablanca players. Yeah.
And they're constantly backstabbing each other and trying to one-up each other and trying to all get this, the trinket, the MacGuffin, basically, which is the bird.
I don't know, the Lauren Bacall stuff. I mean, she's just so much better than Mary Astor, in my opinion, as a
yeah.
for Bogart.
For sure. But I think that element of Big Sleep beats it by leaps and bounds. But I think for the other supporting characters, the Maltese Falcon has an edge in that arena.
I think maybe I've always, and I'm not an expert by any means, but I've always just kind of liked Chandler more than Hammett. So I really like Raymond Chandler. I've read a lot of the Philip Marlowe books, The High Window, Long Goodbye. They're all really good. But
what do you
it's
think
a terrific
of the other Bogey and Bacall movies?
What do we got? Key Largo,
Dark Passage, and Key Largo.
Yeah, Dark Passage is super cool, and I think we were toying about talking about that because the entire first 30 minutes is Humphrey Bogart voiceover only, first person POV.
Yeah,
which we also get in film in another Marlowe adaptation called The Lady in the Lake, which is shot entirely in first person POV from the 50s as well. But that in Dark Passage it really works, and I love that movie. It's awesome. I love
Key Largo. I'm not a huge fan of Key Largo, to be honest.
It's okay. I like Edward G. Robinson in it. I like the. Have you ever heard the Bernie Higson song "Key Largo" from the 70s?
Oh yeah, the one just like Bogey and Bacall.
Yeah.
We had it all down in Key Largo. Yeah.
Great music video.
Yeah. Of course.
I'm gonna post it to the chat. Terrific music video. If you guys haven't heard this one, if you guys don't like yacht rock, you need to be out of the chat immediately. But
for sure. But yeah, I think The Big Sleep, it might be a little intimidating for some people new if you're exploring this, because you might feel overwhelmed by the plot.
Yeah,
you have to realize that the plot is not important.
No, I mean it behooves one to pay attention a little bit, but like.
Oh, come on. I paid it. I've watched this like 3 or 4 times now, and I still get confused. I still forgot that Sean, what's his name? The Irish guy, Sean Regan was a character.
Sean Regan.
Movie,
Yeah, we never see a picture of him or like have any, right? And everyone keeps going back to Geiger's house all the time, like constantly.
Yeah, exactly.
To the scene of the
Eddie
crime.
Mars and like, who's Eddie Mars again? It's like, wait, which one is that?
Eddie Mars is a top bad guy. He's the top.
I know.
Then he's got like a secondary guy who was working with the other gal that worked at the bookstore.
Yeah.
Who's dating
the good bookstore and the bad bookstore. And then Agnes, and it's just, there's a lot of stuff going on here.
It's good though. That's why I like it.
Oh no, it's great. I love it. I absolutely love it. I like it more than To Have and Have Not. I'll say that.
Yeah.
To Have and Have Not's great, but I mean, this is much. I always think of To Have and Have Not as just Casablanca in the Caribbean. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. I think you're probably right about
Is that
that.
fair to say?
Wait, have you ever read the book To Have and Have Not, the Hemingway
Mm-mm.
book? It's like 150 pages long. It's basically almost like a Old Man of the Sea style story where it's just a guy that's gotten shot and he's trying to drive a boat. And then
Oh,
I don't know how they turned that into the movie, which has nothing to do with it. But um, Kino says I had all my actors watch The Big Sleep before shooting my short last month. Huh. What were you hoping they would get out of it? Just curious. That one in the trial. Orson Welles is the trial, I'm guessing, which is also good.
we didn't mention that William Faulkner helped to co-write
Yeah.
the screenplay for this, which is interesting in and of itself. One of the great American authors who dabbled in movies for a little bit, but didn't really take off.
Right. A lot. Yeah. A lot of them did. Like, obviously we have Chandler. Um, but I know that F. Scott Fitzgerald also dabbled in writing. I think Hemingway did too. You had a
Yeah,
lot of guys that were trying their hand at Hollywood as the new place to make money.
yeah, it just didn't work.
Didn't take for some guys, yeah. They couldn't take it.
And Howard Hawks, I mean, a very versatile director of many genres, every genre pretty much, right? I mean,
Right.
tried his hand at everything and was good at pretty much everything too.
Great at everything.
Yeah.
I really want to talk about his movie Only Angels Have Wings at some point. That's one of
Oh,
my
yeah,
favorites and a
that's a
great
good one.
example of like
Yeah.
the Hawksian trio. And I like all of, maybe this is just totally um, out of bounds, but I like John Wayne. I like Howard Hawks' John Wayne Westerns more than I like John Ford's on the whole. Like I like Rio Bravo, El
Rio Bravo.
Dorado, like more, you
Yeah,
know.
no, for sure.
Sorry. I think those are some of Wayne's best. I think The Search is just overrated. Um,
It's. I mean, I wouldn't say it's overrated. I think it's excellent, but I hear what you're saying.
yeah.
Um, but for me, I mean, His Girl Friday is
Yes.
like that's up there. One of the
Yeah, Howard
best.
Hawks is awesome. I actually have a book on it that I have to read that it's been sitting on my shelf for like 2 years. Um, yeah, Red River, so good.
Yeah, and The Thing as well, right? Oh
Which I have
no,
not seen.
The Thing. I mean, guess he didn't really direct it, but he sort of did, right? I mean,
Right. And I know I Was a Male War Bride was just on TCM like last week, and I caught a little bit of that, but
oh really?
yeah.
I looked into that thing you were saying about the TCM on YouTube TV or whatever like that, but you have to pay for
Yeah.
YouTube TV subscription, right? Which is like
Yeah. Yeah.
$70 a month or something like. So it's basically like getting cable again.
I steal it from my old man. I use his login.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's
Yeah, I
probably
don't have
me
cable,
to just
so
add it onto my cable plan then.
yeah, I don't have cable.
Yeah, I'm a boomer at heart here, so you know.
I know you are. I know you are. Can we give people a preview of what's next?
Yes. Oh, interesting. I love Only Angels Have Wings, and I refuse to believe it wasn't influenced by Terry and the Pirates. Oh, that's an interesting. Terry
You
and the
like Terry and
Pirates.
the Pirates, right?
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful comic strip. That's interesting. I've never thought about it like that, but that's
I could
that's
absolutely where it's like the gang that like all hangs out on their little. I love that movie so much. I love Only Angels Have Wings. It's so good. Great sense of place.
yes. So
Kind of like
next,
Geiger's House.
the
Yeah.
next like Geiger's House, yeah. The next one. So remind me again what we're doing. I know we're doing Lady from Shanghai,
Gun Crazy.
Gun Crazy. Oh my god, so good.
Mildred
Um,
Pierce.
Mildred Pierce, and one of yours, another one of yours.
What was the other one?
Oh my god.
Oh, Kiss Me Deadly.
Kiss Me Deadly. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Kiss Me Deadly. Which is have
Okay.
you watched that yet?
Yeah, I've not rewatched it. I watched
Oh,
it
okay.
a few
Okay.
months ago, or maybe almost a year ago at this point.
Yeah, it's
You were
terrific.
the one who turned me on to that a while ago. You had mentioned it, and I had it, and I didn't even know that I had it, and I had never watched it. So I watched it, and I loved it. Definitely was not expecting it to be what it was. So I need to
Yeah,
rewatch it.
it's pretty interesting, and I think that we can talk a little bit more about um, the bomb as it relates to maybe post-war anxiety in that film,
Oh yeah,
right?
for sure. That's one that almost crosses into like atomic age uh,
Yeah, it's science
sensibilities, right?
fiction.
I mean,
Yeah, it's actually probably a good just transition out of noir, right?
Yeah.
And then we can talk about, I think Gun Crazy is a good example to talk about film noirs that aren't in the city and the merits of that. Cause I know like we have another famous one that we didn't talk about that we probably could have, Out of the Past, which
Hmm.
maybe might give you a run for double indemnity's money as one of maybe the most seminal dictionary picture definition noirs. But that's one that doesn't take place primarily in a city either. Right.
Well, also, yeah,
Um,
and have you seen Orson Welles' The Stranger? That's another one that's in kind of suburbs,
no,
small
no, I have
town.
not.
Yeah, that's one where he is a
I
a
know. I want to talk about
Nazi,
Touch of Evil too,
Touch of Evil. God, I'm sorry, I fell
or The
asleep during
Third
that one.
Man.
I
There's
fell
so
asleep
many good
during
ones.
that one, sorry. I have to
Yeah.
finish it.
Kino says Out of the Past is Kino, but do you have the strength to call the Jeff Bridges, James Woods remake Kino as well? You know what I'm talking about?
I do not know. I
They
did
made
not
it they
do that.
Against All Odds. Against All Odds is the remake of Out of the Past with Jeff Bridges.
Okay. I did not seen that. Every Orson Welles movie is great. I'll buy that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Varying degrees, right?
Yeah, Lady
Um,
from Shanghai is dope.
including his final performance as Unicron.
Unicron?
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. Against All Odds is pretty trash. It had a killer Phil Collins song, dude. You got anything else, man? Big Sleep? I loved it. I just
I highly
think I shot
recommend
my
it. I
water.
love it. It allows you to rewatch it multiple times because you're trying to figure out what you missed and what you didn't see the last time. But
Yeah,
it's all just you're just soaking in more and more details every single time, which I love.
do you like Phil Collins?
Of course, who doesn't
I
like
love
Phil
Phil
Collins?
Collins. Fucking love Phil Collins,
I
dude.
mean, preferably with Genesis, but
Oh, really? You see Peter Gabriel put out a new album like a few days ago?
yeah, but I like. Sorry, this may sound heresy, but I like Genesis after Gabriel with
I that's okay.
Collins. Yeah,
Yeah, that's okay. I
that's my jam there. You
Yeah,
know,
Invisible Touch.
of course, that's a great album.
Yeah, Phil Collins is the
The
shit.
Abacab, that's another great
Hey,
album there.
I don't really play video games or anything, but have you ever played LA Noir?
Nope, I don't play video games either. So
Yeah. Um,
except for like Super Nintendo or whatever.
yeah,
But
I think I'm gonna probably download this thing on Steam and play it because it's supposed to be really good. And it's set in but I would encourage you to look up the score for the movie on YouTube and listen to it while you're studying for our next episode. But
and then I was going to say, what do you think about modern noirs or the neo noir? What are your thoughts on
what are my
this?
thoughts? Trash. Throw it in the garbage. Fuck it. I'm out. Boom. No. I suppose that's a really big question, dude. Can't drop that on me with like 5 minutes left in the show. Uh
Or any do you think it can be as good as
it's different. It's different. It's different. But I don't think we have established for our audience here a tangible definition of film noir. So I don't think that I can necessarily
Mm,
understand what's going on with neo noir until I know exactly what's going on with OG noir, which I don't know yet, and we're still
well,
trying to work out.
so let's each give our own, I guess, criteria or definition. So if I were to do mine, I would say it's a distinctly American style of filmmaking, a style of filmmaking that can cross over into different genres, right? That involves a world where characters blur the lines between good and bad, right? Thematic issues of nihilism, corruption, feelings of entrapment, usually involves a femme fatale, as we previously described,
Uh-huh.
and characters are involved in some kind of shady activity that we as the audience feel attracted to and feel complicit in and root for them to do something that's not so great. And visually, it should include these motifs of darkness and light, highly contrasted with each other. And I think those are like where I would vaguely define the category. You will probably disagree entirely, or
No, I don't disagree entirely. I need
You need
I
like
need
criteria.
no. I need like the golden sentence. You know what I mean? That's what I'm working
Well,
for.
you can't define it in one sentence.
You could give it a shot. We can try. I'm gonna keep thinking on
Try.
it.
I can't. I don't think. I don't think it's.
You don't think it's doable?
It's clear cut enough. It's so vague. You can make it whatever you want.
No, because we established at the beginning of the movie of this show that you can't just be going around calling Psycho and Vertigo a fucking film noir, because you're just going to lose all meaning to the phrase if any movie with crime in it is a film noir, right?
Well, that's why I put all those qualifiers in there. Come
You have a
on.
lot of qualifiers, and not a lot of them I feel are in The Big Sleep.
Or in Laura.
None of them are in Laura. Laura is like, I don't even know. It was okay.
Or the Glass Key. I mean,
No, they're not. No, you're right. You're right. I
they're
guess
in Double Indemnity for sure.
They're Double Indemnity for sure. Yeah.
I mean, in The Big Sleep, yeah, there's characters involved. I mean, I guess every movie
You've
is
got
a crime movie.
deracination from like family and order and society and tradition and like moral values. You have, I guess you would have characters that are sort of isolated in their own world and who may have trouble forming relationships that aren't born out of something lascivious, right?
Well, there you go. You got Psycho, Norman Bates.
Dude, yeah, see? Yeah, exactly. You got anything else before we wrap it up, bro? I'm going to work on one. I'm going to work on the definition.
You know it when you see it.
You know it when you see it.
You know?
The old Oliver Wendell Holmes. Yeah. Okay. This has been great, dude. I had a good time. I've had a really fun time watching these movies, and I'm going to keep watching more of them too.
Yeah.
So I think we had some recommendations in the chat here. What do we got? There were some good ones here. Yeah, He Walked by Night and Crime Wave. Haven't seen him. Been on watch him. Thanks, Trembling Colors. Appreciate it, bro.
A really obscure one that I would highly recommend, and I need to rewatch it, but it also has Vincent Price in it, is called The Web. And it was put out by Kino Lorber maybe last year or something like that.
Yeah, The Web.
The Web.
Is that the Nathan Fielder movie?
I don't know.
Do you ever watch Nathan For You?
Huh?
Do you ever watch Nathan For You?
I don't know what that is.
No, it's a comedy show, but he makes a fake movie called The Web. That's just funny. But Kino says, join Discord voice chat in Kino Kingdom after show. I wish I could. I'm sorry. I have to get up really early tomorrow for work, so I have to have a hard out here before 9 o'clock to go to sleep. But thank you very much for the invite. I appreciate it, and I will follow up with. I will be on one of those eventually.
I don't even know. What does that even mean?
Oh, it's like Kino has a Discord server, and he's got like a voice chat where people hop on and like talk.
Oh,
check out Kino's channel if you don't know him, Ryan. He's got really good stuff.
I don't think I do.
And he's huge. He's like a huge channel. Like the fact that he's like deigning us with his presence here is like a huge win for us.
Oh wow, 137,000. Okay.
Yeah, he's like a really popular person.
Okay.
His shit's really good. Yeah.
Okay,
so
cool.
yeah.
Anything else? You did not see Killers of the Flower Moon yet, correct?
No, I haven't seen Killers of the Flower Moon yet. I saw The Holdovers, which I really liked, and I saw Napoleon, which I moderately liked.
Thumbs up for The Holdovers.
Thumbs up big time for The Holdovers. Yeah.
Oh shoot, we can't use a thumbs up. We'll get sued by the estate of Roger Ebert.
Of Ebert, is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, no thumb. It's cut off. Yeah. But yeah, definitely if you're looking for a modern movie, The Holdovers, definitely the one to see. If you have 3.5 hours, go and watch Killers of the Flower Moon. If not, wait for that to come on.
I want to go see it. It's evaporating from my local theaters though, so I haven't had time to.
I think it's on demand now, though. You can probably find it.
I want to see it in the theater though. I just don't. It's hard to find. It's hard to carve out 4 hours.
It's so gross anymore. The guy next to me in The Holdovers was burping and belching and crinkling his candy wrapper. It's just people are so disgusting anymore. Sorry.
Why would you sit by someone? I always try to sit
because
as far
away. People
buy
their tickets after you, and they sit next to you.
Oh, gross.
Yeah, you have to pick your seat
somewhere else, dude.
Yeah, well, we moved because it was empty, but after he started burping,
that's weird. I didn't think that the burping people would want to go see that.
Well, the problem is because all of these theaters have renovated to become these luxury, I'm using quotes, luxury dinner theaters, with the reclining seats and all that. They've dramatically reduced the seat count in the movies.
Right.
And you have to pick the seat in advance. So you can pick a seat where there's nobody sitting next to you, and then other people were like, "Oh, I'll pick these seats," and they sit right next to you. It's like horrible.
Have they no shame?
No.
Do you have an Alamo Drafthouse by you?
No.
Okay. That's the one place where I don't mind food and drink because it's kind of a fun deal and they do a decent job with it. But yeah, anywhere else with the food shit, there was a theater that it had like a little like wooden tray desk in front of you so you could eat your food and watch. It was fucking weird.
No. And the worst is when they actually do the ones where they come and take your order at the seat, because then waiters are coming in and out and people turn on the light during the movie to inspect the menu, and they ask the waiter about the menu options, or they got to order something more, and it's like, come on, like,
dude, go see the movie and then go have dinner and talk about it at the dinner.
Yes, thank you. Right? It's not like the food at the theater is any good either. It's like crap.
Or over a piece of pie, like Travis Bickle.
Sorry, that was my angry rant there.
That's your gripe on the
Yeah.
All right, brother. It's been fun. Always good chatting with you.
Yep. Until next time. I don't know. What are we doing as the interim here? 2 weeks? Oh, wait.
Maybe we could probably fit it in next week. I think I've mostly watched.
We could do it next week?
Yeah, I think we can. And then we'll take a little holiday break, and we're going to come back reviewing Hanna-Barbera cartoons from the 60s. We're going to talk about Johnny Quest and Space Ghost and all that good stuff.
That I'm very much looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Yes, thank you all. And great discussion. And until next time, good night.
Absolutely. See you, buddy.
Bye.